going everyone? It's West Coast Adventures back again. Alrighty, so today we will be going through a few little things on drone rigs. How to make drone rigs, what I like to use, etc. Alrighty, so the main thing you will need is your Blackmagic. Love this stuff, absolutely amazing, never had a problem with it. I like to use the Blackmagic 120 or the Blackmagic 100. 100 pound or 120 is just because of the reef and the chance of getting sharks and stuff, so you don't get bitten off as easy if you run heavier leader. Also the reef, you can drone over a reef and it can be very abrasiony, so that's why I like the 120 for a bit of abrasion resistance, or 100 if you want to go a little bit lighter, but I don't go normally lighter than 100. So then you got your Blackmagic leader. Then we come to hooks. Hooks is a big thing. You can use a wide variety. So what I like to use, me personally, is I like these owners. The offset owners. They are absolutely amazing. I like to use them in a 7 or an 8. Just because they have that really big hole on the hook for putting a line through. And also they have a really nice wide gap between the point of the hook and the base of the hook. That's why I like them for dewies and snapper. Or the other ones that I like to use is the red BKKs. These bad boys. And again, a 7 or an 8. You can use the 10s, but I find you get a bit more snagged on reef and stuff, so I like to use the 7s or the 8s in them. Then some glow beads, just your normal glow beads. In the bigger sizes, in size, say 8 to 10 mil, I like to use them. And then your glow squids. I like to use these particular ones that you get from Getaway Outdoors or Tucker West, yes. These particular ones glow for way longer than any other glow squid I've come across. Plus they're really, really durable, really tough. Can't break them, can't break legs off them, so really durable and tough for the pinkies. And they glow really nice. And then to join that all together, we have the swivels. Me, I like to use the 3-way Ocean Legacy swivels. I like the big to medium size. They do them in 4 different sizes. I like the medium size and the big size, these are the extra large size. I like these because they're a little bit easier to tie with and stuff like that. And that's everything you're going to need to make your drone rigs. Now, to tie them, I just use your normal blood knot where you go through, wrap it around 6 times and put it back through and pull tight. I like that just because you don't need nothing fancy. You still catch big fish. I've still caught all of my big fish on blood knots. Even most of my sharks, I have used a blood knot for a joining knot. So, getting into it, you're going to want to get your 120 pound. And what I do is I get about, say, a metre, a little bit over a metre, about a metre. And then we are going to cut that. I like to make the middle of the rig first. So about a metre long. Nice, we grab the swivels. And we're basically going to go through the bottom swivel first on the big swivel. Because you've got the little swivel sitting on the top of it. We're going to go to the bottom of it. And we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we put it through the bottom of there, and then see how it makes this other loop here when you do it. I like to put it back through that as well and pull tight, pulling everything down, cinching it down nicely, wetting it, pulling on both the tag end and your main end and cinching it down at the same time. Should end up with something like that. Then you can cut your tag. Boom, and that's how we're going to join it all together. And then this one comes down to your next swivel, and we're going to tie that to the top one. The one that the little swivel is attached to, the top ring. That's what we're going to tie our 120 to the other end. And you go through here like that, and see how on the other end I tied to this end we're going to tie to this end. Same thing again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll put it through the little loop at the bottom, and then I'll come back through this loop I make where my finger is. Pulling that tight, pulling on the tag end and your main line, cinching it down as you go with your fingers, sliding it down, wetting it. Pulling on both your tag end and your main end, end up with something like that. Cut your tag again. Alrighty. And then from there, I like to, now we've got that attached, with that end on that end and that end on that end, and it's basically going to look something like that. And then you're going to take that, put that to the side, and then we come with the 120 again, and get a shorter length, like say 70 centimetres to 80 centimetres, like that. And we make the snells. And we're basically using the snells. The way to make the snells, you go through the back, along the back of the hook, put your finger on the back of the thing, hold that there, pulling tension, and as you're pulling tension, you're wrapping it around the back of the hook like so. Wrapping it around, 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 and around, and around, and around. Say like 5 to 6 times around the back of the hook like that. Keeping tension on this the whole time so it doesn't unravel. And then we're going to stick the tag end back through the back of that, hook again, while keeping your finger on the knot to stop it from coming undone. And we're basically going to pull that tight, and you should end up with something that looks similar to that. And then we're going to do the same thing again, but before we do that, we slide a glow bead on, just for a bit of extra attraction, and that's just to help the sharks from biting us off on that. And then we're basically just going to slide another hook, and we're putting our line through the back of the hook, sliding our hook down, and then we're just doing basically spreading them apart to how big you want to have your baits. You have half baits or full baits. I like to run little half baits, little half mullet. So I just run them pretty much nice and close together. Same thing, putting your finger on there to keep the line along the back of it, pulling it tight and wrapping it around the base of the eye of the hook. Like so. Putting your finger on there so it doesn't unravel. And then put your line back through the back of the hook, pull it tight, and then you should end up with something like so. And then basically that is your hooks. And we just slide another glow bead onto there, just like so. And then get a glow squid and slide a glow squid down on. These can be a little bit tricky to put on at times. But if you because I've got the hooks and the beads on there, I'm going to slide the squid on. These can be a bit of a pain to get on sometimes, so bear with me. I'm basically going to slide the squid on just like so. And you should end up with something like that. That top bead's just going to stop the squid from sliding down over the hooks. You should end up with something like that with a decent amount of tag end. The reason I leave a decent amount of tag end is so then when we attach it to the swivels, we attach it to the small bit, the small swivel that's attached to the big swivels. We go to that, leave yourself a decent amount of tag end, making the dropper like 30 centimetres or so, 25, 30 centimetres down from your swivel, joining it again with that blood knot, through the little loop, makes that big loop, back through the big loop, pulling it tight. Just like so. Cutting your tag end off. And that's the top half of your rig made. That end is going to tie to your main line, which is going to come down. Your dropper comes down off of that. Then your main line again, 120, comes down to another dropper, which then comes down to this end, which is the bottom end of your dropper rig. It's basically just a double paternoster. And then what we're going to do from there is you're going to get your another about 70 centimetres of 120. Same thing again with the hooks, through the back of the hook, pinch it, the line down the back of the hook, and wrap it around 5 to 6 times. And like so, back through the back of the hook, pull it tight, and I'm going to slide a bead on, just like so. Then we're going to slide our next hook on, just like so. Slide it down, space it out to how big you want your baits. As again, I like the little half baits, so I come down just to the back of the bead, like that. Pinch it there so your hooks can't move. Again, wrap it around 5 to 6 times. Each wrap has to be underneath itself, like so. Can't be over the top of itself like that. It has to be underneath, like so they're nice and neat. And then put your line back through the back of the hook, like so. Pull that nice and tight. And then there you go, get your nice snell. Slide another bead on. Get 2 beads on there. Let me slide the other squid on. And you're going through the mouth of the squid, coming out the back end of the squid, end up with something that looks like that. Nice, juicy little dropper. And then that dropper attaches to the bottom of your rig, which is going to tie to this little swivel that's coming off the bottom, and then your main sinker line, which is going to be a lighter line, comes down off of that one. So we're going to go ahead and attach that dropper we just made to that little swivel. Put it through, wrap it around 5 to 6 times, put it through the loop, and it makes another loop when you put it through that loop. You go back through there, pull that tight, pulling on your main line and your tag end, nice and hard, wetting it, cinching your tag end down. Should end up with something like so. Cut your tag end off, and then you should be left with a rig, 120 pound rig like that. Goes from your top dropper where your main line ties to the top of that. And these swivels, they do have to sit like that. So the little swivel's sitting at the top. When they come off, it just stops them from, they can't get as close to each other, can't tangle up as much. That comes down to another dropper. Again, comes to the top of the big swivel where the little swivel's attached to, which that comes off the side, your dropper. And then on the end of here, on the end of your rig, we're just going to put a metre of 50 pound. And on the end of it, we're just going to put some 50 pound leader onto the end of there, where that swivel comes down. Just a metre or so. I'll go like a metre. And then what we do is basically just tying a loop, or make a loop with your tag end and your main line and your main end. And you're just going to tie a normal overhand knot in the base of that. And that makes a loop, nice and strong, not going to go anywhere, and that loop is where your sinker's going to go onto. Get your loop, pinch it, put it through the bottom. And that's going to go over, loop goes through the eye of the sinker, then over, and then when it pulls tight, it should pull tight. Something like that. And then that'll come down. That's your grapple sinker. Which can be a bit of a pain to set sometimes. And then the other end ties to your, back to your rig, down the bottom. Again, just normal blood knot, put it through, put it back through, pull it tight, end up with that, nice clean little knot. And then that is your drone rig. Dropper coming down. Comes along, which comes another dropper coming down. See, hooks are very sharp. Just like so. Has to have that little swivel up the top. And then we come down to your sinker line, which comes down to a loop, which comes down to a grapple sinker. We have to use the grapple sinkers purely because they hold the sand a little bit better. You can stay nice and tight to your baits, feel all the bites, and they help exponentially a lot more. They do get snagged a lot and you do lose a fair few, but it's the pros and cons of fishing with these, I guess. But they work very, very well. That's why I use these. And that is the West Coast drone rig. We will go through more on another video on how to bait them and that sort of stuff, but for now, have a good one and get into some fish, guys.